Danny Hurley is not breaking any rules. You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, March Madness is squarely upon us as we had the first four beginnings yesterday. Whew, that was a brutal game with Virginia, but we'll get to that later. UConn has earned the number one overall seed in the East as it looks to defend its national title behind head coach Dan Hurley. I was made aware of Mike Francesa, famous WFAN radio persona, calling out the Huskies and Dan Hurley about their seating arrangements. A buddy of mine, Mikey Casey, shout out Mike, big UConn fan and also big New York sports guy, texted me and said, "What the hell is this?" And, him and I were both Mike and the Mad Dog fans. And so, us old guys, we followed a lot of the sports talk pioneers. And he wasn't a fan of how and where Bob Hurley, Dan Hurley's father, who won 26 state championships as a high school coach, sat at the Big East tournament. I mean, if you were watching, you saw Bob Sr. Sitting, a couple of on courtside, the way the Knicks have the setup at the Garden. He's sitting, 3 or 4 seats away from his son, who's coaching the game. And so this is a quote from Mike Francesa on his Mike Francesa podcast earlier this week on a Monday. It says, "I have great respect for Coach Hurley," meaning the patriarch. "He should not be allowed to sit there. First of all, it's like having another coach there. He shouldn't be allowed to sit there. He should be made to sit back 4 or 5 rows behind the UConn bench because he, first of all, is working over the officials. Secondly, the bottom line is he could coach where he is. The guy's a legendary coach. You would think they wouldn't allow him to sit there." Let's pause for a second there. He went on to say, if your dad was a Hall of Fame coach at the Super Bowl, for instance, he's not allowed to wear a headset next to you if you're coaching the game, unless he has an official role when you're hiring him with the team. Now, I'll pause and give my thoughts on that. First off, it's kind of a sad day for me to know that Mike Francesa is so concerned with a New York sports team in St. John's that he's making up controversies on the radio to further an agenda about Rick Pitino. And, because later on in the quote, he talks about how Pitino was ticked about it and said so later. I don't see any quotes on that. So I think that's a typical bloviating, talking head that's just trying to get a rise out of people. And honestly, people are always going to hate what they don't have. And Dan Hurley right now has nothing to apologize for. He was born into a basketball family. His father was an incredible coach, and he can sit wherever he wants. He doesn't always sit courtside. In fact, sometimes he is a few rows back. But now, if I'm Dan, I'm getting him courtside seats every single game. And I'm sticking it to every person who makes these snide remarks as if this is a big deal. The great ones always have chips on their shoulders. But Dan Hurley has a boulder. And when that ball gets rolling, it's like a freight train. And his players are embodying that culture and that authenticity. I used to love to listen to Mike and the Mad Dog, but it's just sad to listen to what he's become now and how little of a leg he has to stand on there, calling out Dan and Bob Hurley. I mean, give me a break, guy. Was there a huddle I missed? Was Dan bending over and asking his dad for advice? Was Bob Sr. working over the refs? I mean, he may have screamed at a bad call. That's not his right as a paying customer. Sitting courtside, those are probably pretty penny. Probably cost a lot. Maybe he didn't pay. Maybe Dan paid for him. Who cares? Someone paid for him, and he got to sit there. The answer to all these questions is a resounding no. This may make me sound crazy, But if you see Bob sitting courtside in Brooklyn, it may have meant that Danny heard this and said, the hell with it. Let's put him next to me constantly just to piss people off. And I'm all for it. The issue that I have with this is we have a couple of days before the tournament truly begins. We're in the first four. And there's not much to talk about other than the continued disrespect, I believe, that UConn gets almost on a semi-daily basis. I saw a report the other day that Alex Caravan wasn't in the top 10 for the best players in the East bracket. Another mind-blowing thing. I feel like the Alex Caravan disrespect tour continues on. But the issue that I'm having with this more than anything is the allegation that this is some kind of rule breaking. Dan Hurley doesn't have to account for Mike Francesa and his rants. His job is to put the best possible product on the court when it comes to the UConn men's basketball team. And he's doing that successfully. He has learned from his father. I'm sure he owes a lot of his structure, as he's detailed in a game day, about how those practices that he witnessed and was a part of, the camps that he ran and helped run, molded his entire story arc of being a head coach, starting at Wagner. Shout out Wagner, won in the first four, then at Rhode Island, and now at UConn. All of that is because of Bob and his incredible career as a high school coach. But to think that Bob Hurley can't sit 4 spots away from his son as they play in the Big East tournament is mind-boggling. And it's just, it doesn't need much more oxygen than we're going to give it today. But I wanted to address it because it is, let's call it what it is. It's a slow week until we play on Friday. I'm so excited. I wish we played tomorrow. And we're going to detail a little bit about our opponent, the Stetson Hatters. And let's take a closer look at them coming up next. Bracket busted already? Tired of the same old fantasy daily grind where you make a roster, cross your fingers, and hope for the best? Or are you losing the last legs of your pick'em entry? Introducing Better Together. Better Together is the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork triumphs talent and you can play with your friends, not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats, strategize with your partner to boost your odds, and climb the leaderboard together. So grab a friend and join the social daily fantasy sports movement. Better Together is the first cooperative daily fantasy application. Better Together offers a family experience for existing DFS players with a social twist. You can play with a friend or teammate. Provides a sense of camaraderie and enhances the social experience of watching sports. Makes you realize that daily fantasy is fun alone. But like other things, it's better when doing it together. Shows that synergy from working together gives you a better chances at winning than going at it alone. The team. So download Better Together now from the App Store and sign up using promo code Locked On for a chance to win your share of over $1,000 in cash prizes. Remember the code Locked On, because winning alone is fun, but it's better together. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right. So let's talk about the Stetson Hatters. So a few fun facts about the school. Stetson is located in Winter Garden, Florida. Never been to an NCAA tournament before. They were founded in 1883. It's the first school of business in the state of Florida and the first law school, which today ranks number 1 in the nation in trial advocacy and number 3 in legal writing. Didn't know that either. None of that will help them on Friday. In fact, they may need a good trial lawyer because UConn may commit a few robberies and eventually a murder. First things first. They only play 7 guys, and truly 6 get minutes. The majority of them, at least. They are led by their best guard, Jalen Blackman, who dropped 43 points in the title game against Austin Peay. My guy, Jalen here, was 5 for 9 from 3 and 14 for 17 from the free throw line in that performance. The team made a total of 10 threes on 52% shooting from deep in the ASUN title game. They have 4 guys who can shoot at a high clip, 35% or higher. Blackman, Gross, Oglesby, and Svensson. Now, this might be a great time to talk about your watching and your TV habits. What are your habits? Maybe it's time to change it up. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming that you see on the larger networks. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or free Amazon TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Back to Stetson. To nobody's surprise, Stetson is not a physical team, but they do have some length. They start 4 guards in the aforementioned Blackman, Gross, Oglesby, and Svensson. And they have a 6'11" center, Austin Gatoretzy. I hope I said that right. If I didn't, I'm sorry, Austin. And a stretch 4. This is a new name for me. I feel like we're in the age of you see new names all the time. I've heard of the name Trey. Obviously, that's, but his name is Trayton Thompson. It's spelled Treyton. If anyone knows any Traytons, comment, let me know. Don't hate the name. It just looks different when you see it, written out. But he's also, I didn't mention him as one of the better shooters, but he's not bad. He's a 7-foot stretch forward who shoots it at 34%. That's not too shabby, especially for a big guy like that, to be able to do that. But the bottom line is this. UConn may not go 10 deep in terms of, hey, this team only has 6 or 7 guys. We'll run them out of the gym. But the rotation has gone from 7 to 8 with Jalen's emergence in the Big East tournament final. And I've been saying this for a while because I think it truly may manifest itself as the tournament rolls on. Solo Ball has proven he can play big minutes earlier in the year. If they ever got into any type of foul trouble at the guard spot, like I'm talking like a terrible whistle, which is almost expected at this point, that at least we get one game where some of our big stars are in foul trouble. So they roll into the tournament with an 8-man rotation comfortably in a stretch of 9, right? Going into this next game. Well, let's talk about the Stetson team. It's their first ever NCAA tournament. I think what we'll expect and what we can see is that there'll be some initial jitters. I think for both sides. I think UConn coming in as a 1 seed and having high expectations, they're a well-oiled machine. But if you've noticed a trend over the last 3 or 4 games, even when they're playing competition that is good but not great, St. John's team that should have made the NCAA tournament. But that's what were they, between an 8 and a 10 seed? Those are good teams, but not great, right? Starting slow. Started slow against Marquette, started slow against Providence before the Big East tournament started. Another mediocre to better team. And if that happens, I think regardless of if Stetson kind of goes on a run, because they are a 3-point shooting team, they could potentially catch fire, shoot it at a higher clip. That 26.5 point spread is going to look mighty enticing to sharp bettors to lay those points or to get those points from Stetson. But I would caution you to taking that bet, not because Johnny Betts or Mr. Vegas over here, but it's one of those things where UConn has the ability to take a team that plays in the A-Sun and show them what it's like to play this type of competition. And what I mean by that is if they can go on a 40-9 run against a Big East opponent on the road, what can UConn do to a A-Sun champion in a neutral site, essentially in front of their home fans in Brooklyn? Because their biggest issue that Stetson is going to have against UConn is on the defensive end. I don't think that they're going to have an issue scoring points, although UConn's defense will have something to say about that. They average about 78 to 80 points a game, depending on where they were playing. And overall on defense, they gave a shade under 73 points per game. So their win-loss average was by about 5-point margin. So they're used to playing in 1-possession, 2-possession games. So while defense may not be optional, I think it certainly takes some plays off. And I think whenever you have a 4-guard lineup, that it's inevitable. You get taken advantage down low. And if they're allowing 73 points per game at the A-Sun level, then I'd imagine the number 1 team in the country might find a few ways to exploit their defensive attack. So bottom line for UConn is they just need to be patient. There is no tomorrow, like I wore my hat in the show yesterday. But there won't be any tomorrows if they rush to blow a team out. You can't. This isn't boxing. You can't knock people out with one punch. It has to be that steady climb. Just stay the course. Throw your jabs. There'll be kill shots. There'll be opportunities to get that Alex Carabin, trail 3. There'll be the inevitable Cam Spencer get back 3. Don't be afraid to have longer possessions. Run your sets. Those intricate sets that we all know are planned and aren't just players ad-libbing. I still go on that. I'll probably never get Donnie Marshall on the show because of it, but that still cracks me up to this day. But we'll be fine, and we'll see who we play next after Friday. I don't anticipate us having any issues just looking at some of Stetson's film. Like I said, they run good stuff, but it's just the level aspect, and I think UConn's ready for it on the road to their 6th national title. I will be laying those points. I think UConn at 26.5 is actually a pretty decent bet. I'd love it for it to be 24. Maybe there's a site where I can kind of trim that down a little bit, but other than that, I really feel confident that we're going to be in a good spot and go from there. Well, on the next segment, we have a special guest you won't want to miss, the all-time leading scorer in UConn Huskies history, Chris Smith. Fire Stick was my first intro to streaming, and Fire TV is now your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs as well as the Fire Stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV wherever, whether it's opening weekend for baseball or it's college basketball tournament ongoing now, you're going to want to have Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. It's Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the in-game analysis, highlights, and more. Keep up to date with all of the latest in the world of sports in March Madness. Husky Nation, we're here with the greatest of all time in a segment I'd like to call GOAT Talk, because we're here with Chris Smith of our beloved UConn Huskies. Thanks for being here, Chris. How are you today?
I'm doing great, man. Doing awesome, man. Getting ready for the NCAA tournament, man. Getting ready for our Huskies to turn on the bike.
Absolutely, man. Well, let's jump into this segment. You've been on a number 1 seed in the past. What are your initial thoughts about the bracket, and what's the mindset of a team that's a number 1 seed?
The mindset, man, I'm telling you, as a number 1 seed, you just have to keep yourself comfortable. You're the number 1 seed. You already know every team is going to come out there and try to take your head off and win the game. So you have to stay within yourself. run the same plays that you've been running, doing all the things that you've been doing. It's tough, though, because you're the number one seed. And, sometimes that takes away from you just going out there and being comfortable and just playing. You automatically know that you're the top dog. Everybody's going to be after you. And you got to play at your best at that time, So it's definitely a tough situation. But this team could definitely get it done. The Big East prepares you for these moments. And, you play top teams every other night. So they're prepared for this moment. And I think they'll be ready.
Absolutely. Tell me about the proximity to home. You played in the 89-90 team. You guys played in the Civic Center, and then you played in the Meadowlands. This is almost a similar arrangement with Brooklyn and Boston. Do you think that helps or hurts, or is it a mixture of both?
No, it definitely helps, man. You get, number one, your family get to see you play. Because in the NCAA tournament, a lot of times you fly miles away. Guess what? Your mother, your grandmother, your uncles, your aunts, and your cousins, they can't make the game. So the game being so close in Brooklyn, hopefully we make it to Boston. You get a chance to have your fans, your people, the people that love you, they're at the game. And it just makes it a whole lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it ironic that most of the runs that UConn has made have come out of the West. So I'm curious, what this East region will bring. The bracket itself has been called. I've called it the tourney of champions, right? The bracket of champions. What was your thought process on that? Like, what was your initial reaction? Because I think most Husky fans, we have a mixture of, we have this underdog mentality that we'll always kind of not get rid of, but we also have this, that we're pretty damn good. We got the best team in the country. Yeah. So it's like, bring it on. Like, what is there a mixture of that, or what were your thoughts?
I'm just like, I'm looking at the bracket now and I'm saying, how do they put all these great teams in one bracket? It's like they need to mix this up a little bit. I mean, Auburn, San Diego State, FAU, Illinois, Iowa State. I mean, these are top games you're going to have to win every single night that you play. And this bracket got to be the toughest bracket in the NCAA tournament. And I think it makes for good basketball as well, because now, UConn is going to play on Friday. They should beat them, but then they got FAU after that if FAU wins. Yep. So now you're playing a top-notch team right away. And that makes it tough, but it's going to be great for TV.
And also, I feel like because FAU is the sexy pick from last year getting to the Final Four.
Yeah,
I think we're overlooking Northwestern too. Northwestern played Purdue tough twice this year. I mean, if Northwestern wins, I don't think they're as dynamic as FAU, but they can definitely hang with the Huskies. I mean, for a while, I think FAU is the better team, but those are toss-up games. So that's another one. And then I also mentioned this to another guest. You have the AAC champs too. I mean, UAB Blazers, I mean, they may not get to where UConn's going, but it's literally a bevy of tournament champions in this bracket. So it makes no sense to me, but I think it plays into Dan Hurley's mindset of getting his team ready.
Yeah, and I think so too. I think Dan loves this. He wants to play the best anyway. We have the mentality that we're going to tie our shoes as tight as possible and play whoever's in front of us and get out there and try to do the best we can. So I don't think that Dan and the rest of the staff is scared of what's going on, but I do believe that they do recognize that it is a tough bracket.
For sure. Well, since we talked about Dan here and touched on him, well, how much does he remind you of your former coach, the GOAT of coaches at UConn, the former coach Jim Calhoun?
He reminds me a lot of Jim Calhoun, and one thing that people always talk about Coach Calhoun with the yelling and the screaming. They don't realize that Coach was a father figure for a lot of us. After games and off the court, Coach will check on you, make sure that you're okay, check on your family, make sure they're okay. So Danny has those same type of qualities. Yes, he yells at you during the game and he wants you to be the best that you can be. But you realize that those guys don't get upset about it because they know that he has their best interest at heart. So he just wants those guys to be the best that they can be. He wants them to win. And when you know that about your coach, you'll go you go 100% for that coach.
Absolutely. Talk about being honored at Madison Square Garden before the Big East tournament. What did that mean to you, and what was the experience like at MSG in New York?
It's amazing. That's New York has always been the mecca of basketball for me, along with UConn right now playing at the Gamble Pavilion. But just growing up, I've always been a 76ers fan, but my uncles always took me to the Knicks games, to Madison Square Garden. So for me to walk out there and be recognized from the Big East Conference and your peers at UConn, it was just amazing night. And something that I will never forget.
Well, I'd be remiss to not give my friend a shout out who shares your name. He's a UConn fan as well. It's funny, there had been times where I'm like, yeah, my friend Chris Smith, not the Chris Smith. So shout out to my boy Chris Smith, growing up with him in Meriden. So I have to give him a little plug there. Who's your top 5 UConn players? And you can't put yourself in this because you're in it. I don't care. Rip Hamilton didn't put you in. I'm not gonna call out Rip, but I just did. On game day, right? I love Rip too. You're already on my list. I don't care how long UConn basketball plays. You're in the top 5. What is your top 5 all time if you couldn't put yourself in?
Well, I got to put my guy Donyell Marshall in there. I played with Donyell, and then we got drafted. He got drafted when I was playing with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So Donyell was an amazing player. I got to put Kemba Walker in there. I mean, that Big East tournament with the overtimes and what he did was amazing. Emeka Okafor was just an amazing center for them as well. So I got to put Emeka in there. Ray Allen was he's the Husky. He's a great Husky, plus a pro. And I'm gonna throw Rip in there, even though Rich didn't throw me in there. I gotta throw Rip in there, man. Rip's my man, and he did amazing things for the Huskies as well. So I would definitely throw him in there.
Well, yeah, I mean, Rip. I'll tell you a quick story. Like when I was a kid, I went to a Big East tournament in '94 when Donyell scored 42. I think it was against St. John's in that quarterfinal. So Donyell's definitely in mine. Shout out Donyell Marshall, who lives in the same town as me now in Greensboro, North Carolina. He's coaching.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he's coaching, I think, right?
Greensboro Storm. So if I clip this and see him, maybe we'll get him on the show too. But listen, we'll let you go, Chris. Like I enjoyed every second of your playing career.
Thank you,
really
man.
Appreciate you being an ambassador for UConn. Stay on for 10 seconds here as I hit the outro and get us going. But I really appreciate you jumping on for a quick segment here. So there's nothing better than talking hoops daily. And if you're interested in changing things up, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day. Find Locked On Sports Today and now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Well, this has been another episode of Locked On UConn. For the GOAT, Chris Smith, I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, wishing you peace, love, and as always, go Huskies.
Go Huskies.